Welcome to the Sports Note for Friday, July the 28th. I know I haven't been around very much, but quite honestly, there hadn't been a whole lot to talk about. We actually had the British Open, we had Wimbledon, not typically things we would want to cover on this channel. I know I have been talking a little bit of golf, but the British Open is the most unwatchable golf tournament that there is with links golf. I brought it up on the Sports Note a few weeks ago, but we've actually got the Major League Baseball trade deadline coming up here in just a few days. It's Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. We've already seen a couple of moves, and we're going to talk about these on the Sports Note tomorrow night, and there will be a preview of that here towards the end of this show today. But the one team that is going for it right now that's out of the picture but has the best chance to get back to get themselves back into it and be a pretty decent player here are the Los Angeles Angels. The Angels made a deal earlier this week to acquire Lucas Giolito from the Chicago White Sox, certainly helping them out, and then designated Matt Walsh, I think his name was, who was a former All-Star, designated him for assignment to make a roster spot. But the other big move was pulling Shohei Ohtani back off the trading block, as he was one of the big names rumored to be moved. But then the Angels started to get hot. Going into yesterday's action, the Angels were 7-3 in their last 10. They were 7 out in the American League West. They were 5 games back behind of the Houston Astros, and they were 5 out in the wild card. Flash forward 24 hours, and they're now 6 back in the division. They're 8-2 in their last 10. They swept a doubleheader against the Detroit Tigers, and we'll actually talk about that here in a moment, and are now 4 back in the wild card. The Angels went into Detroit to open up what was originally a 4-game series, and then the first of those got rained out, so they played the day-night doubleheader yesterday. And Ohtani, after getting pulled back, clobbered 2 home. Basically, in the first game, went out and threw a 1-hitter, and then in the second game, clocked 2 home runs to add on to his major league leading total. He's now got 38. He's hitting, I want to say it's 289. With 80 RBIs, again, leads the majors. I want to say it's by 6 right now. He's 9-5 on the bump. The 9 wins are, I want to say they're in the top 20 in all of baseball, certainly in the American League. And the Angels right now picking up Giolito, holding on to Ohtani, and there's even a rumor that with the way that they're playing, could go out and end up getting 1 extra person here with some of the names that have been mentioned. Definitely look like a player and are not going to go quietly here. And especially considering back on Tuesday, Mike Trout was put on the 10-day injured list with a hand injury, with a hand or a wrist injury, and after he comes off, it's going to be something where he's going to need probably a few days. So you're probably not going to have Trout back until for at least maybe 2 to 3 weeks here, which is the complete opposite of what's going on with Cleveland right now, because the biggest name that was rumored to get moved was going to be former Cy Young winner Shane Bieber. Now, Bieber then got moved to the injured list, to the 60-day injured list, and is not going to be ready until mid-September at this point, throwing a giant wrench into things to where they had to go out and trade Ahmed Rosario for Noah Syndergaard. And even though Syndergaard's got an ERA over 7, he's 1-4 this year, and Rosario was dramatically underperforming after getting snubbed for the All-Star game last year. But this is something where the Guardians are still hanging around, but they're in the worst division in baseball, whereas the Angels are now getting hot, and they are very quickly tracking down the Houston Astros, who are just 2 back of the Texas Rangers, who have been running away with the AL West for most of the year, or at least leading it. And with the with the Astros getting back Cheaterton himself, Jose Altuve, it's definitely going to make them a better ball club. When the Angels, if the Angels can be within maybe 3 of Houston, certainly would get them within maybe 4 or 5 of Texas at that point. I could see a scenario where by the time Trout comes back, that the Angels are strong enough, especially picking up Giolito, to add on to a very good lineup to begin with, that they could end up challenging both of those teams for the top spot in the division, kind of like the way that Seattle came on very, very late last year, but just ran out of gas at the end to be able to challenge Houston. But it's also the fact of Ohtani being an unrestricted free agent after the year is going to command. He's going to be baseball's first $400 million contract, and it's all a matter of who's going to be able to shell out to do that. I don't see where the Angels are going to be able to do that. And the problem that I have with baseball right now is the problem that a lot of people have with baseball. Is the only 3 major suitors that you can think would actually want to go out and spend the money to get Ohtani are going to be the Yankees, the Mets, and the Padres, who have the 3, or the Dodgers. So again, it's the same suitors over and over. And I'll tell you this much: if the Dodgers or either of the New York teams end up landing him without dumping a massive, massive contract player like a Verlander or a Lindor or an Aaron Judge, I would say that some of the other owners in baseball may want to think about filing an antitrust and blocking this trade. Because then where's the competitive balance? In the NBA, we've seen super teams, but they have a salary cap, and they have the luxury tax. We saw the Golden State Warriors have to actually give up a reserve guard to the Cleveland Cavaliers in free agency a couple of weeks ago, because by matching the offer sheet that the Cavs issued him, it was going to put them over the luxury tax number. So you can put together an all-star team a lot more in baseball and basketball than you can really in other sports. You could put superstars all together in hockey, but those guys are not on the field all the time. Same thing with the NFL. You've got 11 guys out there. 2 or 3 guys is not going to make or break that side of the ball. By putting Ohtani with any one of either of the New York teams or going to the Dodgers, it basically it just adds to an all-star caliber lineup, and shoots the payroll past the moon. Now, yeah, they can execute that payroll, and there is revenue sharing, but how are you ever going to draw in new fans, especially ones in smaller markets, which is the age-old equation, like your Clevelands, your Pittsburghs? How are those teams ever going to be competitive if their only way to win is really go out there and find lightning in a bottle for a mid-range type free agent signing, and then have to develop everything from within? We saw the Pirates start out red hot this year and come back to earth. We're seeing Cleveland right now with that limited payroll, even with signing Jose Ramirez to that massive, massive contract, and Andreas Jimenez getting signed to a $100 million contract. The Guardians right now are a 500 ball club. The New York Mets have a $384 million payroll and are 7 games under 500, and there's talk that they could be moving Justin Verlander by Monday's deadline, by Tuesday's deadline. I'm sorry. Now, granted, Verlander's on the back end of his career, and it could be something that could pave the way for them to maybe pick up Ohtani. But you never really know once a team comes together. But when you put that kind of generational talent, even though he's 29 years old, with other generational type talents and that level of payroll, and go out and try and buy yourself a championship, it dramatically waters down the validity of whatever championship and success you have. If you're successful, if it's something that, like what the Mets and the Padres are doing, going out and spending all that money for an abysmal failure as both of their seasons have been, it actually is going to it's going to put them in the record books as one of the most disappointing teams in the history of the game. We saw, just in the last week, we saw Justin Herbert get over $250 million from the Los Angeles Chargers. We saw Jaylen Brown get over 200. We saw Jaylen Brown get $300 million from the Boston Celtics. The problem there is Jaylen Brown's not even the best player on his team. That's Jason Tatum. Justin Herbert's not even the best quarterback in his division. That's Patrick Mahomes, who's got an MVP and 2 Super Bowls. Ohtani is probably right now on the fast track to winning the MVP in the American League with these offensive numbers and his pitching numbers. If they continue hot and he continues, could he be the first player in baseball history to win an MVP and a Cy Young in the same year? That would be unbelievable. Although his batting average, I want to say the last I looked earlier today, and don't quote me on this, might have been 30 points off the league lead, but still hitting close to 300, hitting 40 bombs, essentially already having 80 RBIs, which is in the top 10 in all of baseball, having the 9 wins. He's top 5 in strikeouts in all of baseball right now. His ERA is over. I want to say his ERA might be close to 4. But really in this era, especially after the rule changes, getting a starting pitcher having an ERA under 4 is considered a blessing at this particular point. So let me know what you guys think. Where do you think Ohtani's going to go? Do you think he's actually going to? Do you think he's going to break 450? Because he's certainly going to break 400. Do you think somebody out there is dumb enough to try and actually sign him at 29 years old to a $500 million contract? We've got a very, very loaded Wise Guys Sports Show tomorrow night. We're going to be joined by guest of show and now essentially new Wise Guys family member, Patrick McGuire from the Cleveland Sports Report. He's going to join us in the first hour of the show, and then the second hour of the show we're going to be joined by Wise Guys Elite member Alex Ruiz, and we're going to actually talk some trade deadline here. So we're going to be completely loaded. You guys want to come on and join us, you're more than welcome to. The invitation's always open. We welcome your comments, your feedback, and I will be back with you sometime next week with the next Sports Note. Take care, everybody.